Coffee. It's our modern ritual. 79% of us Brits drink it every day. That's roughly 95 million cups gulped down daily. But few of us know its history and the fear it once provoked. It's a story not of Italian espresso and Kiwi flat whites, but of Africa and the Middle East. Before we were tea drinkers, we were addicted to coffee. And it began 500 years ago. They say that Calvin, an Ethiopian shepherd, saw his goats nibbling on these bright red berries, then become excited and dance. He took the berries to his local Sufi, who cast them onto the fire, thinking they were quite improper. But then, after an hour or so, suddenly the distinct smell of coffee. Yemeni traders took coffee out of Africa, along merchant and pilgrimage routes, and into the greatest military and political power of the era, the Ottoman Empire. From the 16th century, coffee was slowly sipped through Ottoman cafes and Venetian markets until it arrived in England in the 17th century.
Pascal Rosé opened his coffee house in London in 1652.
Just here.
Exactly in this actual spot. London was notably cosmopolitan, where you might encounter people from traders and their employees from around the world.
There is this wonderful image of two 17th century gents having their coffee with a gorgeous long pipe, sort of like peacock feather smoke. And there you can see an Ottoman in this great turban and an Ethiopian, an African man serving the coffee.
That image is talking about Britain in a global economy, isn't it? It's thinking about how in the coffee house they're smoking, so they're smoking American tobacco, they're drinking coffee from the Ottoman Empire, probably with sugar from the Ottoman Empire.
We didn't just copy their tastes, but their customs too. As in Turkey, patrons sat at communal tables where social rank was supposedly left at the door. The coffee house quickly became the epicenter of London life, from science and the arts to journalism, finance and politics. Within a decade, there were over 80.
And by the time we get to the 1730s, we have 535 recognised coffee houses. That is probably per capita about the same still as the number of coffee houses per capita that we have in the capital today.
But all was not as it first seemed, and coffee quickly got a bad reputation.
It was assumed that many coffee houses put stuff in the coffee to make it stronger and blacker. That would include ink, leather, soot, blood, and chili, because that would make it have more bite.
One of the most curious objects of the coffee house were the tokens used in lieu of money. As a piece of early advertising, many of them were adorned with associated exotic images, such as the Sultan's head. So even during a period of dramatic religious tumult, the standard bearer of Islam was being carried around in people's pockets.
Coffee houses in London made a lot of use of the idea of Turkishness. So lots of them were named after Turkish figures like the Sultan's head or the Grand Emperor. Coffee itself was often sort of discussed as being this Mohammedan gruel or this exotic black liquor that came from the south, determining the shape, the idea of the beverage through Turkishness.
What was the fear of turning Turk?
For most people, turning Turk would have meant abandoning Christian principles and admitting a cruel and autocratic system.
So becoming Turk wasn't just becoming an apostate and taking up Islam, it was also taking on some of the trappings of a foreign society and culture.
So people did think that you were imbibing a foreign Ottoman product when you're doing that, and it might have some strange effects on you.
When an object represented so much spiritual and cultural danger, there was one overwhelming challenge: how to make the foreign European.
To somehow get coffee into a context where it is not overtly Muslim. For example, the French are very obsessed with coffee adding milk. Why add milk? Well, the milk is French. The milk makes it ours.
So in England, the unknown was medicalised. By imposing European science on the humble coffee bean, it was transformed from an Islamic object into a Christian medicine. What it could cure was up to you.
It suggested it had additional medicinal powers, but also people assumed that it had lots of other effects too, that it would cure the gout.
Invariably, there was a backlash. Taverns, who were now losing out on trade, argued that by going to the coffee house, patrons were at risk of turning Turk. Using the guise of men's wives, the women's petition against coffee imposed Orientalist tropes of the luxurious, languorous and effeminate to cuckold the coffee drinker.
The women's petition against coffee is really a complaint against the new kind of male sociability that's found in the coffee house. But it takes the form of a petition written by women saying that all the men who go to the coffee house have been emasculated and have lost their vigour.
These claims could not be left without a response. The men's answer to the women's petition against coffee vociferously argued that coffee, in fact, helped male sexual vitality. Coffee collects and settles the spirits, makes the erection more vigorous, the ejaculation more full, adds a spiritual ascendancy to the sperm, and renders it more firm and suitable to the gusto of the womb.
Coffee houses were turning into places where you would again go to drink alcohol as well as coffee, where you might well spend all evening, and where quite a lot of, to put it bluntly, bawdy things might be going on at the time. We think now not of coffee quite as the everyday good.
Everyone has an account of what coffee they drink and why they drink it.
So we have started again to think, I think, much more about those long commodity chains that we originally saw developing in the early modern period.
Coffee's journey reminds us that there's a forgotten global history in everything around us. Objects may have lost their power, but they all hold a story laden with meaning.
I like a nasty short espresso myself,
But you wouldn't go for a 17th century coffee?
No, I think 17th century coffee would probably be best avoided.